name is Brett Kramer, and I am working here with my Chapter 3 presentation on understanding the community. The community that I work in is Junction City, Geary County Public Schools, USD 475. The customs and traditions of Geary County are a little bit different than a lot of other places that I interviewed when I was looking for my first job. Will be 4 years ago this summer. I'm from a small town, and so I looked at a lot of small towns, and Junction City has that component to it, but it also has a lot of people who aren't from there, who are minorities, who are military affiliated, and things like that. When I talk about the role of the underdog for many people in the community, it's that there are a lot of people that are of low-income families or come from low-income families, a lot of military families, and while that may not seem like it's the kind of thing that would make someone feel like the underdog, they are in the minority. Yeah, there's a lot of other people like them around Junction City and Fort Riley, but at the same time, outside of that very part of Kansas and Fort Leavenworth, in this part of the country, really, there's not a lot of active military people necessarily. Some of the people that we do have, we get because they've come to Fort Riley. They will retire there. Some of them, others though, at the same time will end up at Fort Riley and then move within a couple of years. So there's families that I've come to know, and then over a summer I'll realize sometime in September, well, I haven't seen so and so in the hallway around school, and I'll look them up on the school, the portal deal, and they're not there because they moved all of a sudden. Sometimes it's it's unforeseen like that, but like I said, there's a lot of lower and middle class as far as socioeconomic status goes. There's a handful in the upper class per se. A big change that's taken place lately is Big Red One has come back, and that's a military, obviously, installation, or part of the military installation that has brought many soldiers back. The population it's always been pretty decent, but it's steady as a result of that, and the economy is pretty good as well, by and large, considering some of the doom and gloom that people feel like we're going through as a nation right now. As far as the population goes, 91% of people who are 25 or older are high school graduates. There's a lot more people that are from Junction City that return to Junction City than I ever thought was possible, because that's something I thought you only saw in the real small towns. But like I said, there is a small town component to Junction City. 17% of those at the same age have at least a bachelor's degree, which is I really don't know how that compares to the national average, but that seems pretty low. And maybe that's just because all the people that I spend time around at that age have bachelor's degrees. The people that I work with, it's pretty even split for male and female, roughly 49 and 51%. 8.3 unemployment. 8.3% unemployment rate is probably about where the national average is. The 2010 census reported just over 23,000 in Junction City, Geary County, I should say, which is up a good amount from 2000. And like I said, Big Red One returning has a lot to do with that. 61% white, 22% black, and the median household income is $44,000. Communication channels are kind of interesting in Junction City because we have a handful of people who will still subscribe to newspapers and magazines from other states because that's where they come from, and you'll see those laying around the teacher's lounge or even the classroom. Sometimes kids will have them. But as far as radio goes, 1420 AM is the primary radio station. They're really good advocates of Junction City High School and middle school and Fort Riley Middle School activities and athletics and things like that. As far as TV goes, there's not a local station. Topeka WIBW is pretty popular because all the schools that most of the schools that we interact with, as far as the ones in our league, are from Topeka. There's 7 from Topeka, 1 from Junction City, 1 from Emporia, and 1 from Manhattan. So clearly, WIBW will carry the load there. As far as other news goes, Wichita Television, Cake, Kake, is another popular one. We do have a daily newspaper, the Junction City Daily Union. There's a lot of multilingual speakers. There's what I think is really neat is there's several at the high school, and they're not just the ones that teach your German and your Spanish and your French. We've had several that are physics and math, and that's really all that comes to mind at this moment. But it's kind of neat that they're not just the ones who teach classes from or what's the word I'm looking for? Foreign language classes, excuse me. Like I said, the news comes from primarily Junction City or Manhattan newspapers. Manhattan has the Manhattan Mercury, the national news from Topeka, Kansas City, or Wichita, and then Salina, the Salina Journal also, and then out-of-state newspapers and magazines I mentioned. Junction City has some pretty good community groups. Food Pantry of Geary County clearly advocates for the hungry. There's several people who work in the high school who spend a lot of time volunteering for the Food Pantry of Geary County. There's obviously going to be groups for veterans, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the American Legion, the Eagles as well. All those groups have to do with veterans or even active duty, some of them. I mean, they're welcome, of course, because I think that the military is, you know, each branch is something of a fraternity of people who have that in common, and they're, you know, active duty or retired, they're not going to discriminate in all likelihood, because whether they're active or they used to be active, they all stood for the same thing. United Way of Junction City is also really, really good for some of those who are underprivileged or who might be lower income and things like that. How these groups involve the schools, kids are required to have 35 hours of community service. I guess that carries something of a negative connotation, but service learning hours, I guess, is what we call them at the high school. They have to have 35 before they can graduate. And I found that kids will volunteer for some of these groups like the Food Pantry and United Way. And, you know, they do it because they have to at first, but I've heard many of them talk about how it's a valuable experience as well. So that's very good to hear, and it's good for those groups to get kids to come in who, by the end of it, aren't just volunteering because they have to. It's something that they start to have a belief in, which is kind of neat. Community leadership, it's about like most communities. It's you know, of course, I thought it was the biggest place in the whole world when I got there, because it's a community or a small area, Fort Riley Junction City, of about 23,000 people, and I come from a town of 2,000, but I found that it's not that much different. It's just a little bit bigger. Community leaders, there's the mayor, there's the city council, there's county commissioners, and then the school board, of course. I say informal leaders, and what I mean by that is that there are certain names that you see them all over town, and, you know, in Junction City particularly, there's a couple of people who work for the school district who of a certain last name, and then there's some realtors with the same last name, and then there's an insurance agent with the same, you know. So that's one example. But there's others who, all of a sudden, once you've been there for a while, you start to realize, oh, you know, those are the people that are natives, and they have some pull around here, and, you know, even without necessarily meeting them, you'll know who they are, and that's just kind of how that goes. Like I said, it's got that small town component more so than I ever thought it did. K through 12 schools are influenced by by all of these people. Obviously, decisions that the mayor, council, and commissioners make and impact all the schools, K through 12, and obviously the school board is the same story. And the military flavor of Junction City will have something to do with that as well. The specific characteristics of the community leaders, the mayor, there's been 2 mayors since I've been there in my 4 years. They've both been natives of Junction City. Small town feel, in spite of the transiency, because there's still that core group of people who are from Junction City, who, they've been there forever. Or they've been there when they grew up there and they're back, or whatever it might be. Yeah, there's a lot of people that come and go, but it still has a small town feel because of that. And you know, like I said, when I got there, I didn't think that was possible because of the size of the school and the size of the community. But it's alive and well in Junction City. Networking can benefit you, or I suppose in ways it could harm you. I think there's probably negative networking that exists, just because if certain people end up not being receptive to who you are, maybe because you're not from there, or you're the new guy, or whatever it might be, that can be something that's negative. But at the same time, I think that Junction City as a whole is a welcoming community, because if you're someone who you're the new person and you show you want to be there and you show you can contribute to the school and the community, then it doesn't really ends up not mattering that you're not from there. There are some communities that I think that they're so they're not inclusive at all. They're exclusive, and it takes forever for some people as newcomers to get their foot in the door to be accepted, and that's not necessarily the case in Junction City. Some economic conditions. I mentioned unemployment, 8.3%. Agriculture is a bigger player, like I said here, than a lot of people will think. People think it's all military, and trust me, there's plenty of military flavor. But there's people who live in the Dwight area, which is actually in Morris County, but some of those, it's far enough north in Morris County that a lot of them will come to school in Junction City, so their families farm. Same with Milford, and some even the Wakefield area. There's more than 700 employees in the district. Home ownership is 69%. There's a lot of military folks employed, or the military people who are employed by the district, or by Fort Riley, and even non-military people can be employed there. Construction, maintenance, and service industries. Some core groups in Geary County: the schools, Chamber of Commerce, and Economic Development all get a lot of, or have a lot of influence. Political structure: congressmen of this area, all Republicans, which is not a huge surprise in Kansas, of course, but Tim Huelskamp, Pat Roberts, and Jerry Moran are the big names there. Political structure, I mentioned some of this earlier, but not the numbers necessarily. County Commission has 3 members. The school board has 7, and the city government is the mayor plus the city council. Social tensions don't really exist a whole lot. There's little interracial confrontation, just because people, I think they're used to it. Some people come from other parts of the country. They think they're really tough, and I'm not sitting here saying that I've been in a gang and I know what it's like. Well, I don't, but there's not gang activity at all. Small town feel than I ever thought was possible. There's some cliques, and that's part of the small town sometimes. There's not a lot of discrimination. People just kind of seem used to the minorities that are there. There's cultural differences, but there's not a lot of them. Religious differences exist, but are also not common. The big differences are with the handful of those in the upper class, socioeconomic status-wise, compared to the middle and lower class. There seems to be something of a gap there. And like I said, that's Junction City, Geary County area. It's not, it's not what a lot of people think it is. It's pretty, it's easily manageable. There's a lot of people who think that it's a really tough place because the military flavor and all the minorities and things like that. Okay, I think I lost you there for a second. But anyway, it's not what people think it is. People think it's really tough, and the military flavor and all the minorities and those types of things will contribute to that. But once you're around the place, it's so much easier to deal with and to make your living there than so many people think. And as a result, that's why I feel so very fortunate that this was the place that I got to start my career. I never thought that it'd be this easy for me, and it's been great, and it'll continue to benefit me for probably for as long as I'm in this profession.